The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't
The
care.
BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. I don't know how this day hasn't happened sooner, but now it's here. A fellow Red Sox fan, the president of UFC. He's got a new video game coming out May 25th, UFC Undisputed 2010, the second version of this game, and also May 29th, UFC 114. I don't go 114. I like to say the 100. 114. Rampage Jackson against Rashid Evans. And he's here on the Subway Fresh Tech Hotline right now. Dana White, what's happening?
What's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm doing good. What do you do when you get into the hundreds? I mean, I like how you've avoided Roman numerals. I got to say that.
I swear to God, me and my partner friends used to joke about it all the time. What happens when we get to UFC 103? We used to say that. And then early on, we tried to get rid of the numbers, and the fans just kept calling them UFC, 44, UFC 50. It just kept, but thank God. You know what? Because when we did UFC 100, it was like this huge monumental event. So the numbers actually ended up working out for me.
Yeah, that's so I guess like every 25 will be like a huge blowout, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What, in your opinion, out of those 113, now 114 coming up Saturday, what was the biggest one?
What's been the biggest one?
Yeah.
100 was huge. 100 was huge. Not only was it a big fight and fans were all pumped up because it was the 100th UFC, but we killed it on pay-per-view. We had a big fan expo that weekend. I mean, it was big.
And you also you did a really smart move with the countdown shows, I thought, on Spike, and it just kind of whet the appetite. And for somebody like me who got into it a little late, so much has happened. It's really tough to catch up on the history. And it was just fun to see all that stuff compiled into these little handy shows. The one thing I think that's kind of amazing about what you guys have accomplished is that you haven't had meal tickets for, like boxing will have Ali, and Ali was the guy who owned from 1970 to 1978, and then Sugar Ray Leonard owned from 78 to 80. You guys, it changes like every 18 months for you guys. Do you ever get worried like, what's going to happen if somebody gets knocked out and there's no next guy?
No, because the great thing for us is, people ask me all the time, I probably have 16 or 17 guys that are stars that I could headline shows with. You got to understand, too, boxing's in this position right now, and I'm a huge boxing fan. I came from boxing, but they'll put on 2 fights a year, 2 fights that are considered their big fights. I'm doing 34 of them. Yeah.
And you have exploited pretty much every problem that boxing had. Boxing has no face. You became the face. Boxing has terrible undercards, and it's really you're paying $60 and hoping one fight's good. UFC never has that problem. If your main event sucks, you might have 2 other fights that are great.
Exactly.
And and then I feel like boxing's kind of corrupt. And with your sport, I feel like it's in good hands. How did you personally get that kind of a foothold where I trust you, somebody I don't even know?
Well, thank you. The way that's happened is because I grew up a huge boxing fan. And basically I built this sport off of all the things that I thought were wrong with boxing. All the things I thought they did wrong, I wanted to change and make different. Well, that's not only all the things that you said, which you nailed, I agree with, but also, too, they're live events. You go to a boxing live event, and because there's no undercard and because there's no production value, all they care about is the TV and getting your $60 or $65, whatever it is, on pay-per-view. What about the people who bought these crazy expensive tickets? Some people flew in from out of town and had to pay for airlines, hotel rooms, and food and all this other stuff. How come you don't entertain them and give them a better show? People just show up for the main event. They don't even show up for the undercards. And how do you build new fighters when you don't have an undercard or people don't care about the undercard? These are all things that I changed being such a huge fan of boxing.
It seems like there's a little Vince McMahon thrown in too. True or false?
to be honest with you, I'd say there's some obviously boxing stuff. There's some Vince. There's some other sports organizations that I've watched and taken things from. It's a little bit of everybody.
Because the biggest thing that I'm a long time wrestling fan. The biggest thing that UFC feels like it's, I don't want to say taken, but is similar, is that you promote the hell out of your guys and you promote feuds. And I think what you did with Ultimate Fighter, where you have these two guys captain teams, and it's really this elaborate setup to these guys are actually going to fight in a pay-per-view. But it's hidden in the guys of reality show. Like, that feels to me like something Vince McMahon would have come up with. Right.
Well, I'd be a liar if I said I didn't watch WWE when I was a kid.
Wait, and I mean, how much of the molding do you have to do? Like, are there some guys that you don't have to do anything? Are there guys like you feel like you really had to get involved and create a gimmick for them? How does that work?
Oh, there's all the guys. We don't get involved in any of it. I don't tell anybody how to act. I don't tell anybody what to do. You are who you are. And because the fights are real, you don't have to have any fake personalities.
Yeah. Well, I went to a fight, I'm sorry, not a fight, a card, in 2002. And this was when you were still dealing with the whole, you were still in the human cockfighting, and you had all these people lined up. And compared to what was out there at the time, it was pretty brutal. And you've made a couple minor rule tweaks, but nothing gigantic. And yet now it's 2010, and you don't hear that stuff anymore. What happened?
Yeah, I just think the old owner didn't really see what we saw. We saw incredible athletes, well-educated guys in an amazing sport. We thought that it should be promoted differently. We thought that it is a sport, and you should run toward regulation and be regulated, get it regulated by all the athletic commissions. And just I think there's a small amount of people that want to see a freak show, and there's a ton of people that want to see a real sporting event.
Yeah. And it probably drives you crazy, but it's much easier to get hurt long-term in a boxing match than it is in a UFC fight.
No doubt about it. Much easier in football. And the reality, the stigma that's attached to this thing, what a lot of people don't realize, there's never been a death or serious injury in the almost 20-year history of the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
You've had some
cheerleading can say that.
You've had a couple gross arm breaks, though.
Yeah, but that's not a serious injury.
No,
serious
true.
Injury to me is something that changes the quality of your life.
Right. And what's interesting is that, and I don't even know, you probably weren't even thinking about this in the early part of the decade, but with all the stuff we know about concussions, the worst thing you can do is keep fighting after you've been kind of dazed or briefly knocked out or whatever. In UFC, You're done if that happens.
Yeah, it's done because then the guy has the ability to jump on top of you and keep hitting you. So the fight's immediately over when a guy gets rocked. Basically what it means is, in a boxing match, when a guy would get knocked down and have to the count of 10 to get back up and continue to fight, the fight's over in the UFC.
Yeah. I mean, knock on wood for this next thing, but, you have been lucky. You haven't had a serious in-ring incident that everybody can point to and say, see, look at that. You haven't had your Dooku Kim yet. You haven't had any of those things. And for me, as somebody who's rooting for you, and I think it's the savviest sport that anybody's put together in the last 20 years, how you've marketed, how it's grown. That to me is the final step, is how will the public react if something really horrible happens in your ring? Is that something you've been thinking about?
Well, here's the reality. At the end of the day, this is fighting. This is fighting, and anything can happen at any given moment. I understand that, but your odds go way down when you do all the right things. For instance, number one, our fighters, no matter what, go through full medical testing before the fight, which means, EKG, physicals, they get CAT scans to make sure their brains are good. Then during the fight, because this thing is regulated by the government, the athletic commission oversees it, you have the proper medical people there the day of the fight, testing out, checking the guys out. Then when they actually go in and compete, you've got the ambulance there, you've got the doctor. Then as soon as they're done competing, they go see the doctor again and they get evaluated again. As long as all these safety measures are in place, it's a very safe sport.
Yeah. I apologize for saying
happen.
I apologize for saying ring and not octagon.
Oh, no, that's right. People do that. I catch myself doing it sometimes.
And you're not supposed to say fight either. What do you say, match?
Yeah, it's a fight.
It's okay. All right.
Fight.
Well,
these guys go in and compete, but it's a fight. Listen, I don't try to sugarcoat it or whatever. It's a fight. But because I'm so into the sport of this thing, people realize, these are two guys who are going in to compete against one another to find out who the best is. No different than any other competition.
Yeah, I'm sure you know this, but you have fanatical fans that protect the sport and they bristle whenever any media comes out against in any way. I've always been pretty UFC friendly for the most part, but when did you really feel like this had gone from kind of a little bit of an underground thing to something that was really happening?
After the first season of The Ultimate Fighter. That's when it exploded.
So what year was that?
It was 2005.
Okay.
Fight between Stephen Bonner and Forrest Griffin. It was on the finale of The Ultimate Fighter Season 1 on Spike TV. That thing grew up to 10 million viewers during that fight. It actually, for 6 minutes, it outrated the Masters.
Wow.
On CBS. Yeah. And that was when I knew, because after that fight had happened that night, for the next, 3 or 4 days, it's all people were buzzing about.
How do you have to turn it over to the fighters in one degree, but at the other degree, you've stepped in a few times, and you don't mind becoming part of the news, and it just happened with the Anderson Silva card recently. Do you have to pick your spots with that stuff?
To be honest with you, how you were talking about how we have these rabid, diehard, crazy fans? I'm one of them, and you're right. I can put on all the bells and whistles and do all this stuff, but once that door shuts and those guys go in there, it's up to them. And one of the great things about the sport is, these guys always deliver, man. They always deliver. In the last 10 years, I could count on one hand how many fights have sucked in the UFC.
Yeah.
And when guys do goofy stuff, I do call them out on it, because I was that guy. I was that guy growing up who would stay home on a Saturday night and not go out with my friends, buy the pay-per-view, and sit home on a Saturday night to watch a fight. And when you do that and you're a fight fan, you want to see a fight. Period. End of story. I'm that same guy, and I know that there's, millions of people out there buying the fight, and all the people that came in and paid for tickets and flew into town, and I'm going to give them what they came there to see.
Yeah. Well, you have this Ultimate Fighter that I guess was, I forget when it ended, but it was Rampage against Evans. And we always hear about there's bad blood with these guys. In this case, there really is bad blood. They don't like each other.
No, they hate each other.
That's your dream scenario, correct?
Yeah. Well, obviously, it's always great when two of the best fighters in the world are fighting each other. But when they don't like each other, it's just that much better.
How many can you get out of these two, you think? This will not be the only time these guys fight, I don't think.
It all depends on the fight. If on this Saturday night, this fight is an absolute back-and-forth war, and, either ends one way or ends in a controversial decision, then you can do it again.
So you just play it by ear. You never sign people to rematch clauses, any of that stuff?
No, none of that stuff. It depends on the fight.
And I saw you already have, I think it was UFC 118. You already had the main event. How many ahead of these do you schedule?
We plan out our entire year where we're going, and sometimes tentatively. But right now, I know all the way up to August who's fighting.
And the venues, too, correct?
Idea, as long as nothing goes wrong. Yeah, and the venue. Yeah, we have the venues planned out for the year.
See, the venue's planned out for the year, and then you have the main event planned out 4 or 5 months in advance?
Yeah.
For the most part. And then the undercard can change depending on what's going on.
Exactly.
And you always, going into each event, you feel like, all right, we're going to at least get 2 phenomenal fights. I'm not sure which 2 they're going to be, but we'll have 2. That's usually the average.
Exactly. I like to call them my holy moments, Basically, when you watch boxing, the only time you say holy is when you're like, holy that fight sucked. You know what I mean? When the thing's over.
Right.
I guarantee you, when you buy a UFC card, you're going to have a couple of holy moments where you're like, holy that just happened.
And how long have you been in Vegas?
First of all, I grew up, in a place called Ware, Massachusetts, outside of Boston. And in 3rd grade, my mom moved me out to Las Vegas. She got a nursing job out there. So I grew up there till I was 18, and then I moved back to Boston. Stayed in Boston till I was 25, and then moved back to Vegas.
And what hotel did you work at as the bellman in Boston?
The Boston Harbor Hotel.
Really? Look at you. And you hated it.
Yeah, I hated it. I don't want to say I hated the hotel or anything like that. I just hated doing that. That just job wasn't me. And, I one day walked out of there and said, I'm going to quit. I'm done with this. I'm not going to do this. One of my buddies was like, are you out of your mind? You're 19 years old, making $60,000 a year, mostly in cash. And now you're just gonna walk out. And I said, I don't care, man. I'm gonna be in the fight business one way or another. I don't care if I don't make any money.
And then I think like 2001, you convinced the brothers to buy the UFC, which this is incredible, but was available for $2 million.
Right. Yeah. I was actually training fighters at the time and managing some guys. And the biggest thing I had done really at the time was there's a kid named Jimmy LeBlanc from Boston, and he was a good up-and-coming amateur kid who turned pro. And right before he turned pro, we were trying to get him into the Olympics, and he lost to Fernando Vargas, trying to get into the Olympics. Then I got a kid named Derek Harmon, a fight with Roy Jones Jr. Those were really the two biggest things I had done. And I was managing Tito Ortiz and Chuck Liddell at the time, and through the contract negotiation, I found out that the UFC was in trouble and going out of business. So I called the Fertitta brothers and said, I think we should buy this thing.
Now it's worth a lot more than $2 million, I think.
Yeah.
So you're in Vegas full time. You're in Vegas full time, but you come back. Yeah. You come back to Boston every once in a while, right?
Oh yeah. No, Boston is like my second home, man. I love it there, and the people in Boston treat me great, and treat me like I'm one of their own.
That's good. Yeah, but you have not been able to do an event at the TD Bank North, whatever it's called.
Yeah, we are. That's what we're doing in August.
Oh, really?
And those guys yeah, I still call it the Garden, but the guys there have been very good to us and helped us get this thing rolling. Yeah, they've been great partners for us. We're doing a fight there in August. Not only are we doing a fight there in August, we do this thing called the UFC Fan Expo, which we're doing this weekend in Las Vegas. It's huge. It's crazy. Think about this. A fan expo is one of those things where you'd walk up and pay to get in when you get there, right? We've pre-sold over 16,000 seats tickets to this thing.
My God.
And it's twice as big as it was last year. And now in August we're going to take it to Boston, and it'll be huge there too.
That's excellent. Hey, so can you get in every state now, or there's still some that won't let you in?
Yeah, we're in every state now except for New York, which we're looking to get done this year.
And what is the obstacle in New York?
The only real obstacle in New York is this is where all the bad stuff started. Because the original owner was out of New York, and he burned a lot of bridges here to the point where it actually became a law, like against the law here. So to get in and change a law, it takes time. It's nothing that happens overnight. We've been working on it, and we're very confident that it's going to happen this year. And we've been working with Madison Square Garden here to get it done. So when we do, that's where we're going.
And maybe that for UFC 125, talking about blowing it out, that could be a good one. There's one guy out there that you don't have. I'm not going to say his name. People can go Google him. But considered to be the best heavyweight. And I don't know, I feel like he kind of chickened out. He went to the inferior place that didn't have the same kind of competition. Does it bug you that guy didn't want to come over?
Anybody who considers this guy the best in the world is out of their minds. This guy hasn't fought anybody since, before we bought the UFC. You're talking the late 90s, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the guys who fight in the UFC consistently 3 times a year fight the best fighters in the world. And the only reason that anybody, and it's a lot, really where it comes from, are these goofy MMA sites, okay? And, anybody that we don't have, they love to say, oh, they don't have him, this guy's the best. And as soon as one of these guys shows up, they end up getting smashed. And he would too. Believe me, I tried to get this guy in. But, Showtime is, I've picked a big beef with those guys too. I can't stand them. And, they sucked at boxing, and they sucked even worse at mixed martial arts. And, they needed this guy, so they threw a ton of money at him. Showtime did.
Well, you were right about Kimbo Slice. You said from the get-go that he wouldn't make it in your place, and you finally put him on The Ultimate Fighter, and he was terrible.
if you look throughout history, we're very good at knowing who's good and who's not. I mean, we cut guys right at the right time, right when they're, when they come in and try to. There was a guy recently came in and tried to do a huge, we gave him an awesome contract. He came in and was asking for millions and millions of dollars, and we ended up letting him walk, and he ended up getting beat by a 170-pounder.
Right.
He weighs 185, and we made the right call. We're pretty good at what we do.
I don't know how you feel about SureDog.com, but they had their pound-for-pound top 10. Anderson Silva ranked number 1. You agree with that?
Yeah. Anderson, I don't agree with a lot of things that that website does and says, but, yeah, I do agree with that.
How about St. Pierre? St. Pierre, too?
Yeah, St. Pierre's in the mix, too. Yeah, I'd give St. Pierre, too, definitely.
The overrated Russian that you don't like was number 3?
That's insane. It's insane for this guy to be, first of all, he's not the best heavyweight in the world, number 1. Number 2, to put him on the pound-for-pound list, do you know what? I think some of these guys don't even know what pound-for-pound means, to be the pound-for-pound best in the world. And it's just so disrespectful to all the other fighters. It's crazy.
How do you feel about Jose Aldo at number 4?
No doubt about it, man. He might even be higher than that.
Okay. And then John Fitch, number 5.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
That's a tough one. That's a tough one.
All right. So
He's
then the rest.
Good, but he's never won a title, and to call him one of the pound for pound best in the world is tough.
The rest of the list is Edgar, Penn, Rua, Shields, and Machado. You agree with that?
I would agree with everybody except for Jake Shields, and whom I like, and I'm trying to. I'm probably going to work a deal out with, but I don't think he deserves to be one of the pound-for-pound best in the world.
Is there a next great one on the horizon, in your opinion?
Most of these goofy MMA sites, what you have to understand is what a lot of these guys are in it for the money. They get paid, from all the smaller promotions. They get paid a lot of money from the smaller promotions, so they feel like they have to put some of their guys in some of these things. That's the way that works. That's why it makes me sick and drives me crazy.
It sounds like it.
It's not a real pound-for-pound list. They either don't know what pound-for-pound really means, and the other obvious is they're being paid.
Oh. I didn't say that. You did. Silva.
Oh, no, I said it.
Silva, who came off that perplexing pay-per-view. What happened there? Just got bored? Is he just too good?
It's a good question. I wish I had an answer for that question. I don't know. I don't know what happened that night, but I sat down and I talked to him, and hopefully we never see that again. Hopefully what we see, the next time he fights, which is going to be this summer, is the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world come out and prove why he is and should be the best pound-for-pound. You had people talking, he shouldn't be the best pound-for-pound. He's had a couple of, disappointing wins. Listen, if somebody's the best golfer in the world, but he continues to win, doesn't matter what he golfs, he's still winning.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that this guy is the pound-for-pound best in the world. It's just his last couple of performances haven't been what everybody would like to see, and what I know he's capable of.
You offer incentives during the night for the night's best fight, the best knockout, the best submission. How did you come up with that idea? Because
it's, I think that if there's always a carrot out there, I can make more money. And it's not just like, they're going to give me an extra, 10 grand, extra 20 grand. These bonuses are anywhere from $65,000 up to $100,000. And you can be involved in the best fight of the night, which you would get paid for, and pull off the best knockout or submission, which, again, could be anywhere from $130,000 extra dollars to $200,000 extra dollars. That's some serious incentive, to go out and make sure you go after it and put on a good show.
You are given age 22 the best UFC prospect of all time. Let's say we created him in some lab, and you are allowed to pick what style he's going to fight for the next 12 years that you think will be the most successful style that gives him the best chance to dominate. What is that style?
I think guys who have, I'd give them two styles. I'd give them Muay Thai great Muay Thai and wrestling.
And that's it.
Usually the guys who can defend the takedown and stand up and go at it, or guys who can take you down, put you against the fence, and absolutely smash you.
But for a pay-per-view, your dream fight is the two guys that stand up and just try to punch each other, and then eventually...
No, I like the ground games, too. I like
Really?
guys to go to the ground. Oh, yeah. But let me tell you what, when you got two guys that are great at submissions, and it's just an absolute chess match. For instance, George Soteropoulos and Joe Daddy Stevenson just fought recently. Two great submission guys going at it. It was awesome and very, very, very exciting and entertaining.
When you have something like that happen...
What I like is I like finishers. I like guys who go in and go 100%, balls to the wall, and try to finish fights. I don't care if it's on your feet, on the ground, or where it is. I like finishers.
So, but like, with the submission, it almost seems like there's some luck involved. What would you say, two guys fight 10 times, how many times does one guy win, how many times does the other guy win, versus what the actual result is?
It depends on the guys and the style, you know what I mean? There's some guys that can win 10 out of 10. There's some guys that would go 500, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you feel like there's been a guy who just had bad luck one or two times, and maybe his career should have been different than it was?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And that's one of the things about this sport. There's so many different ways to win and so many different ways to lose. On most of the fights, you never know. Anything can happen. Guy just gets in the wrong position at the wrong time, throws a punch and overextends and gets caught with something, or gets down on the ground and gets caught with something. But that's what makes this so fun.
So who would be the best example of somebody that, man, if he just had a little luck?
But you've been in boxing for years. It's so easy. It's so easy to set up fights in boxing with guys that you know are going to win. You know what I mean?
Right.
Everybody always has a puncher's chance, but in boxing, you're almost guaranteed this guy will win. And then you get this guy up to 45 wins with no losses and 40 knockouts, and just you can't do that in mixed martial arts. Anybody can win on any given day. And then as far as who's the guy who's had some bad luck and never really, I would have to say, you know what I'd have to say? Probably Stephan Bonner. Stephan Bonner had that first fight with Forrest Griffin, and those guys were evenly matched. It was a war, and Stephan Bonner's had some trouble after that. He's had a couple of bad wins losses when people thought he was going to win.
Is there anybody that you feel is overachieved from maybe what their ceiling was?
Oh God, there's when I first met this weekend, Rashad Evans will fight Rampage Jackson during season 2 of The Ultimate Fighter. Everybody counted Rashad Evans out. Up until this last season, Rashad Evans had the record for fighting the most on The Ultimate Fighter. Because everybody picked him because they thought he was out of shape. They thought he was lazy. They thought he wasn't that good. He ended up becoming, winning the Ultimate Fighter heavyweight division, moving down to 205, winning a world title, and still being considered, one of the top 5 guys in the world.
I called him Rashid at the beginning accidentally. I know it was Rashad because I watched that whole freaking season, and it was a great season. I really enjoyed it.
It was.
So let's say they figure out. Let's say Obama gets involved with boxing. And let's say he says, you know what, I'm a huge boxing fan. I can't accept how bad boxing is anymore. I can't accept all these belts and how corrupt it is. I'm going to make somebody the czar of boxing, and I'm going to give them the omnipotent power to save them. And that person is going to be Dana White. Do you take the job?
To take over boxing.
Yeah. You're the czar. You're the czar of boxing appointed by President Obama.
I just think that boxing, here's my thing. Number one, I think that boxing is just in so much trouble for so many different reasons, and to come in and to try to control it. Do I think it can be done? Absolutely. Here's the other problem, though. The other problem is now that mixed martial arts exists, it's so much more exciting. You can watch everything. Why would you just want to watch one aspect of fighting?
You know what? I don't want to totally agree with you on that, but I'm leaning toward you possibly being right. And I do wonder if people that watch boxing are people that watch boxing because they grew up loving it and they're holding on to something that's kind of dead in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. I believe that 100%. And I'm one of those guys.
Yeah.
I'm one of them. I will lay in bed And if there's a fight on, I will watch it. But that's where I come from. I grew up with it. I did it. I was in the business for years, so it has a special place in my heart. It does. But it's in big trouble, and it's probably going to go away.
I was
one of the things you got to understand, and you know this too. You're a boxing guy. You understand the sport. Where it's really been crippled and hurt is at the amateur level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The amateurs are gone now. It's just non-existent anymore. Because let me tell you what, when the amateur boxing was strong in the United States, you didn't see European champions. There was no such thing. These guys got their asses kicked. Mexico and the United States dominated boxing. Period. End of story for years.
Well, you know what the biggest problem is, and the thing nobody talks about because it's kind of, we're not supposed to talk about it, is I really think the fact that Ali can barely talk was the worst thing that ever happened to boxing. Because if you're like a young athlete on your way up, Ali was the biggest boxer of all time, and the guy he's shaking, he can barely speak. I don't know if that's the road you want to go down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But
it's depressing.
I don't know if that's 100% fair either, because there's absolutely no link whatsoever to Parkinson's disease in boxing.
Yeah,
and
but
lots of people who've never been punched a day in their life have Parkinson's disease.
I know, but it's a little. This gets on a whole dicey discussion, but he has. Isn't it called like punch-induced? I forget what the exact term is, but it's Parkinson's syndrome induced by blows to the head, I think is how they described it. But it sure seems to me like you look at the punishment that he took from 74 to 78. All the rounds that he put in he wasn't in shape, and 15-round fight after 15-round fight, just getting clocked.
And the layoff. The layoff is what really hurt him, too, when he went through that whole, listen, fighting is a young man's sport. There's no doubt about it, number one. Number two, I don't care who you are, how great you are. If you walk away from fighting for a long period of time, it's tough to come back.
Well, and then also, like, let's say you're a young kid who does want to fight, and you're 15, and here you have UFC on Spike. You got this reality show. You got a good pay-per-view every month. It's big on the internet. You got this fan expo. You're courting those guys. Aren't they more likely to just gravitate toward your sport?
Absolutely, no doubt about it. And again, my thing is, why learn one piece when you can learn everything? Dude, you're still doing boxing? Huh, that's crazy. We're taking mixed martial arts. Not to mention the fact that you can go down in any major city anywhere in the world and go start taking mixed martial arts lessons. When you and I were growing up, your parents would put you into karate and taekwondo. MMA is the new martial art. Yeah.
And then I think, the more we're learning about concussions, and just how horrible it is to get punched in the face, stand up, then get punched again.
Yep.
I don't know. I don't know if boxing's around.
You basically almost get knocked unconscious, and then you've got to count of 10 to get back up. And it can happen to you again, and you can get up again, and it can happen to you a third time before the fight is finished. In the UFC, you get rocked once, the fight's over, because the guy has the ability to jump on you and start hitting you.
Yeah. It's depressing. I'm like you, though. I love boxing. Like, I wasn't going to pay-per-view Mayweather-Mosley. I'm not doing it. I'm not spending the $60. And then an hour before the fight, I'm pay-per-viewing it. Just because
I actually bought tickets and went live and watched it.
Oh, no. And you knew, deep down, but then Mosley has the one round two, and you're like, oh, I'm so glad I did this. And then by round 8, you feel like an idiot.
From one boxing fan to another, have you ever seen anything weirder than when Mosley lights him up in the second round? And then is completely exhausted. It's not even like he threw a barrage of punches. He lit him up with that big shot and then couldn't do anything. He was literally exhausted. Dude, you've been in Big Bear for 4 months training, and you're tired in the second round. How did that happen? Especially after his last fight when he fought, what's his name? Who did he knock out? Destroyed him. The guy that had the cast on his friggin' hand.
Roy Jones. Was it Roy Jones? I can't remember. He's knocked out a couple.
No. He got busted with the cast on his hand. Margarito.
Oh, yeah, Margarito, yeah.
He hurts Margarito and then goes in there and throws like 150 punches to destroy him. And then he's tired in the second round after clipping Floyd. It was so weird to me.
That was weird. So you must go to basically all the big Vegas stuff because you're there, right?
I do. I go to big fights, man. I go to little fights. I love fights. I love boxing. I love MMA. I go to as many fights as I can possibly go to with my schedule, And let me tell you what. I flew to Dallas, Texas. I flew to Dallas, Texas a few months ago to watch Pacquiao fight Claudy I flew down to Dallas, Texas Stadium for that fight. And let me tell you what, when Floyd eventually steps up to the plate like he should for the sport and for everything else and fights Pacquiao, I'll be at that fight too.
Yeah, but it's a little weird that Pacquiao is being so weird about the blood test.
I disagree.
Why?
I agree 1,000,000% with Pacquiao. No fighter should be able to dictate what type of testing the other fighter has to do. That's why you have an athletic commission. You know? If I was Pacquiao, I'd say, okay, I want Floyd to take an enema every day leading up to the fight. You know what I mean? And what, Floyd's supposed to do it? Come on.
Well, but how do you...
Pacquiao's never tested positive for anything. And he's been tested by all the athletic commissions, you know, including Nevada, who's considered one of the best. You know, but Floyd's going to dictate the type of drug testing he's going to take. I would never do that if I was Pacquiao's guys.
What do you guys do for that stuff?
It's just on principle alone.
What do you guys? Do you feel confident about the policies you have?
Yeah, well, ours are the same. We fall under the same rules and regulations as boxing. The Nevada State Athletic Commission comes in and tests our guys. They randomly test guys. They come in and do whatever they want to do. That's why there's an athletic commission. You know, when other fighters start trying to dictate what type of drug testing the other fighter's going to do, it's insane. It's insane. I don't disagree with Pacquiao at all.
You're showing a little more faith in the Nevada Boxing Commission than maybe I would.
Yeah, because you know why? I've dealt with these guys before. Believe me, I've dealt with Nevada. Did you name the state? Name the state other than New York, and I've dealt with them. Believe me, you know, everybody thinks that these guys are on it. They do their job. Listen, I've had my beefs with refereeing. I've had my beefs with judging. But when it comes to safety, drug testing, and all the other safety measures, they're on it. They're the government. Believe me, they're not holding back and not trying to bust somebody doing something.
What do you think was the tipping point for you guys with getting these celebrities to start showing up? Because that's really one of the final levels for whether you're going to make it or not.
Well, you know what? No, that's and at the end of the day, too, that's all a facade. You realize when these boxing events happen, HBO runs these events. HBO flies all these celebrities in. They have deals with these guys. They pay for their hotel rooms and all that stuff. We don't do any of that stuff. You want to come to the UFC event? You buy your tickets. That's what we do. You know, these things sell out like that. So when you see celebrities at our thing, these guys flew in on their own dime. They bought their tickets. And, you know, there's no placing and asking stars to come. The stars who show up for ours actually want to come.
Yeah, but see, I knew that. So when did that start happening?
It started happening, I don't know, probably around, I think the first celebrity we ever had at an event was Donald Trump. He showed up at UFC 32 out in New Jersey. And at one point, Trump was trying to compete with us, and Trump's one of the guys that I've always respected because, and you've never heard me say a bad thing about Donald Trump, because early on, Donald Trump saw this thing and was very supportive. There was a time when venues didn't even want us, and our first two events when we bought the company were at the Trump Taj Mahal. And
so then after that, I mean, now it seems like with the athletes, it's big now.
Yeah, that's true. Every other sport, you know, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, hockey, you know, even boxing, all these guys come and watch our events.
Your video game, UFC Undisputed 2010, the second version of this game. It's the final stage of when a sport's really making it. The video game, the kids learning all the moves and all that. What makes this game better than the last game?
Well, I'm blown away by how many changes they made in just a year in this game. The head movement, you can roll under punches, you can slip punches. They have southpaw. They didn't have southpaw last year. The submissions, all the different career and game modes and everything else. And there's a lot of extra fighters. Like I said, I'm blown away by what they did in just a year. And the great thing about this game is what you just said. People who aren't even into the UFC or don't know about it can actually pick up this game, start playing it, and learn who the fighters are, learn submissions, learn the moves, learn basically everything. That's why we kept it so real and true to the sport. This video game, not only is it a great video game and fun to play and all that stuff, it's a great tool for us.
All right, well, come back another time to talk Red Sox because we ran out of time this time. Good luck with UFC. Good luck with UFC 114, the video game, the Fan Expo, all that stuff. Congratulations on everything.
Hey, thanks so much for the support, man. I really appreciate it. It was great talking to you.
All right, you too.
Bye-bye.
Target percent off.
Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Podcenter at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.